Farmview with Kieran O'Connor on WLR.
Brought to you by GlanviaConnect.com.
Welcome into this week's edition of Farmview. It's Oliver Carroll sitting in for Kieran O'Connor, who'll be back to business next week. But in the meantime, I hope you can keep me company as we take another look at some of the pressing issues in the farming world.
Farmview with Kieran O'Connor on WLR.
With GlanviaConnect.com, Ireland's biggest online farming shop and more.
Our first guest on Farmview this week is a gentleman called Tom Hickey, who's a farmer from Stradbally, well known in dairy circles and indeed dry stock farming. But he has turned his attention in years gone by to forestry. And we're interested to find out his experience of that. And what has happened of late is the setup of a limited company by interested parties in the whole forestry area, often seen as the poor relation of agriculture in Ireland. But he joined us on the line now. Thank you for joining us, Tom.
Thank you, Ollie.
First off, Tom, you might just maybe set the scene here in Ireland as to where we're at with commercial forestry in terms of, say, the rest of Europe.
11% of the land in Ireland is covered with forestry, and the time to bring it up to powers would be about 20. Now, Northern Europe will be 20 to 30, up near the 30 in parts of like that's tradition. So we're getting there. And the farmer, the private forester, he'd own about just short of half of that forest.
Gotcha.
And that's,
yeah.
That's the interest we're doing. The last while there since Christmas, we have set up a new forest owner group just to represent the producer groups. And the main intention, top of the list would be the importance that growers and not third parties are the ones to benefit from the harvest and of the timber, and also get a reward for the stock of forest carbon credits. So them are the things we are looking at.
So this was within the premise of a limited company, and those are the reasons be for setting that up, Tom?
Yes, we thought it was a stronger structure to go for a company limited by guarantee, and then for long term, it's a better way to go.
And what has been the reception to that?
The slow problem and issues of the challenges we have, because we're a first generation, farmers don't understand the value of the timber. We must educate the farmers.
Yes.
And they realise that we have to come together under one voice. That we have no other agenda, only protect the value of the return of the interest of the farm forest owner. Now, as a matter of interest, the farm forest owner, he mightn't be your conventional farmer, but another job, and he had bought some forestry, and they become considered farm foresters as well.
Well, now, in your own personal story, I know you've been a dairy farmer, you've lots of knowledge of that, indeed dealt in dry stock over the years. What made you get into forestry?
Well, so the big decision for me is about 20 years ago now, and I had some land, and I had a lot of work reclaiming it and draining it, and no matter how good it looked, it wasn't a financial return. So after putting a bit of thought into it, I said I'd plant it with forestry. I remember talking to my neighbours at the time, and they were a bit sceptical of it, but definitely for Tom Hickey, it was the best decision I made. Financially, it is the best investment. Even up to this day, it's a great return on the forestry. But secondly, this stage now we're thinking I can actually have walked through the forest myself, and for health reasons, I have to explain it. It's so relaxing. So it's just beautiful. That's why I went for it. It was the best thing I'd done. I would avoid other farmers. Plant if you have a bit of land for shelter, or because, for good investment for the next generation, even if you plant it, it's a long-term thing, which is good.
Are you going conifer? Are you going broadleaf? Are you going a mix of the two?
Yes, we're a mixture. We have conifer, and conifer, which will be the best return of value for money because it comes in faster. And it's also, which I didn't realise when I did plant the crop, that the spruce crops now, they take more carbon from the air than any other broadleaf.
Very interesting.
Yeah, the spruce tree is sequence, I think, the word most carbon. And so one of the issues now that we will be doing at the moment, and that we will want credit. Like I milk cows too, just mentioned I milk cows. I'm paying a carbon tax on my cows. I cannot understand why I can't balance off what the trees soaking up the carbon. You know what I mean, like that. It's one of the issues that we will be dealing with.
I hear what you're saying, yes.
Yeah, but the biggest challenge that we have at the moment, while forest is positive and there's a good return and the price is strong at the moment, there's still challenges. And the felling licence, it's intimating up as they go along. There need to be change. When I will get planning to plant my new forest, it should be part of that the next time I need a felling licence is when I'm going for clear fell. You shouldn't need a felling licence, a permission from anybody to maintain that forest or thin that forest along the line. It's just ridiculous. And the best way I could describe it to people that mightn't understand forestry is, if you have a home, at some stage back the line, there was a planning permission licence to build a house.
Sure.
And if you were to follow the system in forestry at the moment, if you decided to insulate your house, you'd have to go for planning permission to do it again. And somebody up in Galway or Mayo could object to it, nothing at all about you. That's just a frustrating system.
I'm amazed at this, Tom, because you look back maybe 30 years, right? Somebody got into forestry and they've minded those trees all that time and what have you. And they come to that 30-year fruition when they're looking forward to getting the few bob and all the rest of it. And the next thing, you can't achieve a felling licence. Surely there has to be a governmental department fall down there.
There is. When I went for a felling licence there 10 years ago for my first tinning, just completely straightforward. I got in a forester, made an agreement, you done the paperwork, 2 months, walk away, no problem. Every year there's new restrictions coming in. I don't know why. But what we're trying to put in place is now, you just get permission or a licence to plant your forest, and the management plan would be in that. And the next time you would need a felling licence would be whenever you're going to clear.
Mm-hmm.
Maintenance in between. You shouldn't have to look for a felling licence to maintain your crop. It just makes no sense. And when we're doing that here in this country, we're still importing timber from outside the EU.
Which is mad.
It makes no economic sense. From a farmer's point of view, like myself, I can wait for 12 months or 24 months for the timber. It doesn't mean the market goes up and down, but it'll still be getting valuable. There's people involved. There's 12,000 people also involved in it. There's 12 and a half, I think, involved in it. I know one of my friends, he bought a new harvesting system there in the last 12 months. And those are modern computerized gear. He paid nearly £1 million for it. Now, that's oil at the moment. It has a knock-on effect. The department, they set up a new farm forest committee there lately. There's nobody from the forest producer service and that group of people.
You would imagine when the land is initially set aside that is proper forestry land, we've signed it off as same, and that when it comes to felling, as you said, there shouldn't be really any problem there because it was agreed that was going to be the case. It's no surprise that you're going to be felling trees and indeed replanting, let us not forget.
Yes, and there's no problem with that. There's no problem with that. But put the structure in place. The day you plant your trees, I get permission to plant some trees, you have a management plan. And unless you go away from that, you shouldn't have to get a felling licence or anything to do that trees. And that's what we're arguing. But there is a problem to another issue. And it's funny in one way. But one of the government ministers stood up in the door in the last 2 months and actually said that when they're talking to farmers about forestry, we shouldn't be mentioning big words like biodiversity. We don't understand. Well, I tell you,
in this day and age,
and we understand the value of it. But when people up at that level, if that's the way they're thinking, it just increases.
In the age 2020, 2021, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's what you're dealing with. Now, because of the cost that has been involved to get experts in to answer all the questions, some of the average size of forestry, which I was surprised at forestry, is 7 hectares, which is really small. Some of those are not going to take out because it's going to cost more to do the paperwork than the forestry is going to be worked. And we want to simplify it, we want to have straightforward, and we want to do the thing right. And that's what we're about.
Well, it looks like you have a job of work ahead of you because it would be very hard to encourage people to come in to the forestry end of things or set aside some land for it on the current going, isn't it? It is. People understand the value of forest. I know that talking to neighbours. Do you understand the value of forest? And the returns are there. Do you understand more about the carbon? Do you need the forest for the carbon? The one negative is the amount of paperwork. It's just ridiculous. And because of that, this year, 2020 now gone, they plan to plant, I think, between 8,000 and 9,000 hectares. They'll be lucky to get to 20% of that. It's not because it's not a good return, not a positive thing. It's just the paperwork, there's a lot of paperwork that went into it. Can I ask you, the maintenance of your timber when it's growing, is there a lot to do in that? No, not really. Basically what you call about maintenance is keeping the drains clear and proper and like that, and taking out the timbers, taking out the inferior timbers, I suppose, and leaving the better timbers or the straighter timbers that would have more potential when they're down the line. Because you need straight timber. Straight timber, that type of market. So when you're maintaining and taking out the timber, there is a move at the moment for continuous cover, and it's a bit more popular in Northern Europe, and the powers that be are favour of it, and I can see a lot of light in it, that you only take out after X amount of years, you'll go in and take out a small amount of trees
And the sprouts trees, they will regenerate themselves. We're learning the whole time. But yes, it is changing, but the thought is they have to come with us like that. I mean, you can't have all this paperwork.
Can I ask you, Tom, can you fell that timber yourself, or do you have to go contractor, or is it just that specialised that you really have to go to the man with the big machinery to do this?
No, you can. Well, you can, but you must go after the market. And what we do here, we cluster groups together, and when the harvesters come along, you'd have a lot of work in one area.
Yes.
And then the transport and all, you can't be, say, cutting 5 acres in the wall for taking up to Dungarvan, another 5 acres. We try to cluster it in and get them. That's what the producer groups are about. We're there to educate one another, to help one another, and cluster the trees together and get that market and get them all in together like this. That's where we work.
You see a bright future for the forestry industry, despite the fact you have to overcome all these things?
Look at. There's no doubt about it. The amount of forestry in the world is dropping. Like you can see, you'd really see it in Brazil and them countries are just felling.
Lungs of the earth, they call it, Tom.
That's what it is. But long term, it's one of the few investments that's ahead of inflation. Like there's no way about it. And it's also a fantastic way for families to keep finances together, maybe to educate their children. Just mean they don't have to sell it ever, just keep it together until they want it, or to pass it on to the next generation like that.
In terms of a guaranteed income.
Just one the difference in culture. I was at a Teagasc organised meeting just some years back, and the chairman was very good, and he said, if we were in Finland or Germany, he said, on a Sunday, and he mentioned the word a farmer and so on, or maybe 3 generations, they might drive out to see the forest. But if the 3 generations went for a drive on the Sunday in Ireland, he said, they'd go to a hurling match. So that's the culture. But it is changing. I know I'd meet farmers and we discuss timber. That wouldn't have happened 20 years ago.
Well, Tom, we wish you the best, you and the people involved in forestry in terms of the limited company setup, and hope it brings good things and a proper share out, says you.
Thank you for that.
Tom, thank you for talking to us.
Bye-bye.
That's Tom Hickey from Stradbally.
Farmview with Kieran O'Connor on WLR.
With GlanbiaConnect.com. Thousands of products in the palm of your hand.
And you're very welcome into part 2 of Farmview. It's Oliver Carroll sitting in for Kieran O'Connor, who'll be back to business this time next week. Just about to take a look at our farming calendar, see what's going on round about us. Of course, the marts have now reopened with strict level 5 COVID-19 procedures in place, and with no ringside sales for sellers or buyers, with all sales now, of course, live online. And for the purpose of that, and for purposes of bidding, you can check out the LSL app. Just to let you know as well, New Ross Mart's next dairy sale is Friday, February 5th. It's at 12 noon. Very strong demand for all types there. And please note that their cattle sale starts at the new time of 9:30 a.m. every Saturday, and entries now being taken on that. For more information, talk to Richie on 086 845 2402. A reminder as well, of course, Dungarvan Cattle and Calf Sale every Monday. Viewing starts from 10 o'clock, and then the sale itself from 11 a.m. And just a quick mention, the Teagasc Virtual Sheep Conference 2021 live webinar happens at 8 p.m. tonight, Thursday 28th of January, so still a small bit of time to get in on that. And you can register by clicking on the link www.teagasc.ie/sheepcon21.
Farmview with Kieran O'Connor on WLR.
With GlanbiaConnect.com. Ireland's biggest online farming shop and more.
Well, it's certainly a busy time on farms throughout Waterford County during this winter into spring period, and a sheep farm certainly no exception to that. And joining us on the line, I'm delighted to say, is Austin Flavin of Teagasc Dungarvan. Austin, good to be talking to you.
Hi, Ollie.
Austin, I know you've had your sheep webinars and seminars in the last week or so, and I know you've another one coming up on the 2nd of February, Tuesday the 2nd of February, and we'll get around to talking about that in just a moment or so. But certainly a busy time, really, this lambing season, is it not?
Yeah, and it's been a good year all round on the sheep front, but you're coming into the lambing period now, which is quite labour-intensive and can be quite stressful for farmers.
In terms of handling facilities, very important, because it's such a busy time. You really do need to be able to handle the stock properly, don't you?
You certainly do, and we'd be kind of recommending there maybe one lambing pen per 6 to 7 ewes as a rule of thumb, penning them in numbers probably 25 to 30 in the bigger pens before lambing, and ideally penned off depending on whether they're singles, doubles or triplets. But I suppose this time of the year would be, just getting the reminder out there for lads, lambing can come upon you quite fast. Having the disposable lambing gloves, very important. lambing ropes just to aid lambing with a difficult lambing, having a foster crate, and just having the likes of a thermometer, an iodine on hand to help you during those periods when it does get busy. And especially the most important one probably is just having maybe spare colostrum available for any ewes that are not letting the milk down.
So important to get that colostrum into them early, isn't it? There's just a limited window there.
It is very much so, because the majority of mortality happens within the first few days, and there are a number of things, I suppose, we'd advise farmers to have on hand to help reduce that mortality. Stomach tubes, extra feeding bottles and teats, maybe a heat lamp as well, just to check that the lamp is working and in good order before you start off. And then from a veterinary point of view, it's very important to have, your needles and syringes and maybe antibiotics on hand. And also then maybe the likes of glucose there for an energy boost for a lamb that might be a bit under the weather. And I suppose the other few bits and pieces come into play then in terms for marking the ewe, tail ring applicator, having a good, clean, fresh water supply is very important, especially with this frosty weather. Facilities in place that you're prepared and ready to go for lambing when it does start.
Also keeping an eye on your herd, and I know you're in touch with them every day and all the rest, and you're seeing them every day, but disease and inoculation and what have you, and vaccinating.
Yeah, vaccination is very important and would have taken around the time of breeding, just from the point of view of whether it's abortions, enzo or toxo and so forth. So I suppose it's now it comes to fruition whereby you don't have that mass abortion, maybe miss that comes about. So the vaccination there at breeding, very important.
And all stock, particularly if you're buying in at any point, you have to be mindful of fluke, worms and scab on arrival, don't you?
Yeah, and a lot of farms now would have a protocol in place just to that any ewes that might be, and the fact it's been a very good year on lamb sales, it's been very encouraging for lads to maybe buy back in replacements and keep going and hold the replacement levels. So quite often we would hold a replacement ewes, quarantine them maybe for 28 to 48 hours, dose them, check their feet, maybe run them through a foot bath,
sure,
and make sure their fleeces are dry too going out.
Very important. It's hard to believe that, Brexit, which has had so many negatives, has been a bit of a boost for the sheep industry, hasn't it, in terms of all that stock that was coming in from the UK, now not part of the picture.
Yeah, and it's been an exceptionally good year on the price front. I mean, prices this week now are kind of steady at about $6.15 to $6.20 a kilo.
And much needed after all those lean years. Yeah,
certainly. The sheep industry is it's a rare breed. Effectively now, you come down to Waterford, there's about 40 flocks left in the county, and you're looking at, I suppose, prices this year certainly is encouraging for the next generation to keep going.
Tell us a little about the next virtual webinar you're going to have, which is on the 2nd of February, is it, Austin?
Yes, that's right. Next Tuesday, the 2nd of February at 7:30.
You have a great panel there?
Charles Teagasc, the local vet, a lot of farmers there in the locality will be familiar with Charles. He's farming himself, so he'll be running through flock health pre-lambing. And we'll have two other speakers then, Frank Campion and Terry Carroll, just running through nutrition prior to lambing at that time. So all local sheep farmers will be receiving a text from the Teagasc office, or those who have not received it can contact the office and we can send on the link. Very important to do these things, Austin, isn't it, in terms of keeping that educational thread going throughout the year and, farmers talking to farmers too. It's a great learning phase, isn't it? It is, certainly, and we all just need that reminder from time to time. And it might be just something small, even sitting down for that 20 minutes or half an hour to listen in and tune in. It might just remind us to, get that extra bit of maybe protein or order that extra half load of concentrate that's required. And even if it's only the one tip you pick up, it's worth doing. It's worth being a part of. Certainly is. And the two things we'll be reminding farmers of also is to have the census returned by the 1st of February. And the good news as well this year is the sheep scheme has rolled over for a 5th year. And it's worth 17 million nationally to have that sheep programme in place, so very much worthwhile. And lots of advice from your Teagasc advisor as regards filling out those forms and what have you. Certainly, yeah. We'll help farmers fill out the paper form by the 1st of February, and we can help them online as well, which has to be in by the 15th of February. In terms of the industry itself and indeed farmers themselves, and you pointed it out there early on in the interview that you never know when lambs are going to drop and what have you. Farmers need to be looking after themselves too, Austin, health-wise. Certainly, and I suppose one blessing on the agricultural front is that COVID had not as big an impact maybe as in other industries. We've been able to continue and work away, but nonetheless farming by its nature is quite solitary, and it's very important to have the communication links open. So we'd always say, look, whether it's someone you haven't heard of or talked to in a while, maybe just give them a ring for a quick chat. That can always be quite uplifting, and quite often you find they're in the same boat, and we're social beings by our nature, so it's very important to have somebody to talk to, and certainly it leads to a better light at the end of the tunnel if you feel you're alone at times.
Absolutely, and indeed a problem shared is a problem halved, isn't it?
Oh, it certainly is, and quite often, whether it's a neighbour you meet on the road or someone, we're always keep your social distancing, of course, but it's no harm just have that quick chat to see how things are going.
Given the buoyancy in sheep at the minute, Austin, you'll probably be expecting a bit of an increase in numbers through 2021?
Yeah, it's been very positive, and the outlook is certainly looking good for the sheep trade going forward. So we'd expect to numbers at least hold, if not increase maybe slightly, which is very important down here because I suppose we are in a dairy-dominated area, yes. So if we can hold our own, that would be very encouraging.
Just to say that obviously sourcing the correct foundation stock very important too if you are going that route.
Oh, it is, because at least then you'll know, I suppose, from the point of view of the vaccination protocols you're buying from, and quite often, that link would have been made over a number of years, and you're quite familiar with the flock that you're sourcing from, and that's very important because at least you know the condition at which they'll be coming in. And what you have to work with. That's very important.
Time moves fast, Austin, and people will be thinking of, as the spring moves on and all the rest of it, to getting stock out again. And in terms of stocking rate, good to keep in mind there and how you're fixed, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly. We'd be trying to match, I suppose, maybe grass supply to what ewes and lambs you're leaving out. So quite often we'd be building up maybe to, 8 to 10 ewes per hectare. Yeah. And maybe on more heavily stocked farms, you could go up to 12. But anything over and above that, grass supply can be hit depending on the weather variabilities we've got with the last number of years.
You must be happy enough with the Mart situation. People really have seemed to have taken up on the whole app and the new way of doing things.
Yeah, it's been, I suppose, the one positive aspect from a technology point of view with COVID has been that it has forced us all to take that joint leap, maybe that we wouldn't have otherwise. And it's worked out quite successfully. And there has been, trading has continued and people are satisfied. Now, we would still say, to go in maybe and do that viewing beforehand, if at all possible, to view the stock. But certainly going out and bidding then maybe from your car and so forth, it has worked out a lot better than what we thought.
Yeah, following the protocol, says you. But, and again, no better people than farmers, and it's often forgotten in terms of educating themselves and investing in their future, new technology and all the rest, isn't it?
Yeah, and quite often, given the age profile of farmers, it
would surprise
you. It can be the older generation of farmers, and they've proved really adept at taking it on board and being with it, which is very encouraging.
Good stuff. Well, just a quick reminder on the webinar again. Just remind us on that date.
Yeah, it's next Tuesday, the 2nd of February at 7:30.
And how can people connect with that if they haven't done so before?
Yeah, so if they haven't been, we've sent out the links to our clients, and if they haven't yet received one, ring the office and we can send it out to them to their mobile.
Austin Flavin of Teagasc, thank you so much for all those timely reminders and good talking to you.
Thanks, Ollie.
Well, that's where I got to leave it. For myself, Oliver Carroll, thank you so much for the company. I really appreciate that. Don't forget, the much-heralded return of the one and only Kieran O'Connor will be this time next week here on Waterford's WLR, so do listen out for that as normal service resumes. I want to say thank you to Mark Phillips. He's updated me on some of the racing results across the course of the week, and great to see such a success locally. Dungarvan Jock being an example of that. Niall Houlihan, he recorded his 10th winner of the season at Wincanton, while Trevor Whelan was on the mark at Dundalk. The Houlihan brothers, Niall had 2 winners, and Sean 1 winner. Had an afternoon to remember at Plumpton, winning 3 of the 6 races down for decision, so no mean achievement there. Kappa jockey Tom Quealy recorded victories at Kempton and Wolverhampton, while the Flynn family from Dungarvan enjoyed a Grade 2 chase win at Thurles. Once again, thank you so much for the company. Look after yourself, look after each other in these strange times. Goodbye and good farming.
Farmview with Kieran O'Connor on WLR.
With GlanbiaConnect.com. Thousands of products in the palm of your hand.